we developed the website, this was a really good example of what I call customer inside government. We genuinely took a clean sheet of paper, and over the course of 5 months, we had customers absolutely immersed in developing that website. And we used technology to our advantage. So we used eye tracking technology, etc., to really build that website out. And we looked at principles of design. So a lot of the feedback from consumers was 3 clicks and I'm done. If you put me through any more than that, I'll give up. And so these were core principles of design thinking that we learnt through that process and then implemented into the website. So where do we go from here? Well, there's a range of things I just want to touch on briefly on the right that are the next stages of development. My Service New South Wales is really the on-mobile version now of where we're heading with a lot of this capability. Digital licences, big project underway, and I'll give you a brief on that. Easy to do business, really critical for this state, and you'll probably be amazed at some of the data I'll show you in a moment. Maybe not. If you're trying to start a small business in this state, good luck. Huge challenge. And so we've got to start focusing on getting business right, not just consumer right. Payments platform, a big issue for government. And then finally, dashboard. And Pedro touched on this. But again, it's that transparency theme that I want to come back to with dashboard, which I see is really important for us as a government going forward. So first of all, my service. It is about this easier, sort of make it much more simpler for me to get transactions on my mobile. So if you think about my Opal card example, why isn't that in my service account? Why can't I log on once, be authenticated once, and then renew, top up, whatever it might be? What about e-toll? I mean, I find it incredibly hard to believe that here we are in 2016 with a damn stupid tag that we still try and stick to the windscreen to go through e-toll. Keeps falling off. Then what do? Tag falls off, it's not read, so you get a letter in the mail and we fine you $1.42 for not having your tag up. I mean, that's just unacceptable from a consumer experience. Why shouldn't that be on a mobile? Just have my mobile phone in the car and it's read automatically in my service account. So these are the sort of things that we've got in the pipeline to really bring together. One of the first things we did with that, and if you haven't got it, I encourage you to get the app. One of the first things we did, which will make you smile if you're using it, is to give you my fines information. This was a deal that I spoke to Treasury about because there is a much higher propensity to pay, as many of you would know, if I have a pay capability on my mobile. And so the idea behind this was, one, to make it easier for you, but secondly, to get revenue in the door more quickly. And that's exactly what's going on. So simple example now, you can look at your fines, you can look at who is driving the car, so no more getting away with saying the wrong thing perhaps with that. But that idea is really about making it easier for you, as with a number of other things we're doing in this space. And payments capability, I'll come back to in a moment, but really important. Digital licences. Again, this has come out of a lot of research. I don't know how many forums I've been at where people like you have come up to me and pulled out their driver's licence, pulled out their fishing licence, pulled out their boat licence, etc., and put them all on the table and said, when are you going to do something about this? Now, an obvious application is put those inside the phone, as I was talking about with Opal. So we've got a major piece of work going. In July, we will launch the first 3 digital licences. So, for example, we will give you a fishing licence in your mobile phone. Now, this is not just giving you a digital licence. You can appreciate in this room this morning the ability to then do other things with it. So once I know where you're fishing, for example, I can pump you information about bag limits in real time. I can give you weather information in real time if you're out in the water somewhere where that's applicable, etc. So these are real value-add opportunities to give you as a citizen more information when you need it. And then by the end of 2017, we will do the driver's licence. Now, we're doing a risk-based approach to this. So we're deliberately taking simpler licences first. We'll get all the feedback, we'll road test it, get it right. By the time we get to driver's licence, which is the most complex because driver's licences are used for many things, re-identification, not just for a driver licence. And then we'll get that to you, and so what you'll end up with is all those plastics gone. I mean, it's a huge indictment on government today. If you look at the plastics, of which there are about 23 million, 23.6 million licences in New South Wales, 769 licence types. Now, another question is, do we need all those licences? That's another piece of work that's going on with part of the IPART review. But the point being that even today, many of those plastics are produced down the verticals of government by different manufacturers. We don't even get the economies of scale of printing those through one or two manufacturers. So there's a huge leapfrog in efficiency, cost, etc. here to actually go digital. So a really important project to take forward. And by the way, at this point we are leading the world in this. There are two states in the US that are playing around with this. I can't find anyone else that's actually doing this. So, and you'll have read recently that Western Australia and South Australia have announced digital licence programs. So part of the challenge, if I take driver's licence that I was referring to, of course, is cross-jurisdictional boundaries. If you get pulled up in Victoria and police say, show me your licence, pull out your phone, well, obviously they've got to be able to read that. So there's a lot of work to go on around that across boundaries. But really good progress to date. Business. Let me just talk about business for a few minutes. This is staggering what we put you through to start a business. So we are intensely looking at 5 sub-segments, and I've just given you a snapshot there of cafes, restaurants and bars. So if any of you in the room are thinking of starting one of these this morning, make sure you've got a good banker, because you're going to need cash flow support for probably at least 12 months, because this is what we put you through. So if you just look at the top there are 13 agencies you need to deal with to start a cafe, restaurant or bar in New South Wales. 30 plus phone numbers, 48 forms and 75 regulations. On those 48 forms, 1,764 fields, of which 40% is repetitious. Now, if that isn't inefficient, and by the way, none of the agencies talk to each other. So here I am, the poor business person, so I start this business, and I'm trying to deal with all these agencies with no time to think about my business. And of course, one of the first things that I will do is get a location if I'm a cafe or a bar or a restaurant, because location's so critical to my success. Now, if you make me wait today, 12 to 18 months, would you believe, to start this cafe or restaurant, to get my licences in place, I potentially have that period of negative cash flow. So you think about actually addressing this value chain, this goes straight to the economic bottom line of the state. Hugely powerful. Apart from giving you and I, as the business owner, a much better outcome. So the immediate challenge is turn that into 3 months. Now, when I discussed this with the Premier, he said, that's great, but I want 1 day, as he would. I said, look, Premier, that's terrific. We'll get there from a digital and transformation point of view, but you're going to have to change a lot of regulation to do that, because we test a lot of things up front, as many of you are aware, that have to be after the event. But that's fine. Cabinet's up for it, so we'll get to that point. But this is a huge one now to take forward in terms of benefit to the economy and to potential business owners. My digital bell has gone off, so let me just close out with a couple of comments, just firstly around payments. I used to be on the other side as at Westpac being the banker to government and the tenderer then into that government banker. But bankers have this great word called entanglement, right? We entangle you so much in the bank that you can't get out. And so if I look at agencies with payments, many agencies have their own payment system, but many of them are not compliant today. Many of them can't update to new payments capability. And so we have built a payments gateway for government. And then we can start channeling all payments through that. One of our major agencies, for example, doesn't collect merchant fees, $18 million a year left on the table, because they can't do it with their system's capability. So this is more a back-end piece, but equally very important, and this will really change the landscape. So if Apple Pay come along, for example, and say we want to do something with government, we can use this new gateway to immediately implement Apple Pay across all agencies. That could not be done today. So a very important piece of work here at the back end. And finally, in closing, at the dashboard. This came about in a conversation with Premier and others about 9 months ago, when I said to them in Cabinet, how do you know how the state went yesterday? Like, how did the trains go? How did the buses go? How did the hospital wait times go? The answer, of course, was, well, we don't. Unless someone says to me, secretary or whoever, that's how I find out. Now, those of you that have got corporate backgrounds will be used to the fact that, you've got a dashboard of metrics. I mean, in banking, I had daily, weekly, monthly, you name it, right? I could tell you what was happening with product margins, etc. We don't have that view in government. And again, this is about transparency. So we've implemented this now, first cut. It's not perfect. There's nowhere near enough straight-through processing that the Minister referred to earlier. There's nowhere near enough in real time, but it's work in progress. And the whole idea of this fundamentally is actually, for me, more important around culture. We are great in government thinking about the verticals. Our great Westminster system forces us to think down the verticals. This starts to force us to think horizontally. And the reason I say that is, if I use the example of transport, if you're in Cabinet, that's on the wall and trains suddenly go red, it will get the eye of the Transport Minister, Andrew Constance. If it gets his eye, it'll get the Premier's eye and the rest of Cabinet. The Minister will go out, the first thing he'll do is ring Tim Reardon, his secretary. Now, Tim will want to be in front of the game, right? So Tim's going to want this on his wall. So he's aware of it before the Minister calls him. But the really good thing from my perspective is Tim's not only seeing transport, he's seeing how health are going, how education are going, and so on. So the secretaries are getting a whole of government view. This is a horizontal culture change across government. Now, it's early days, but very important. The plan is, once we iterate this further, and Pedro and I are working on this, is that ultimate transparency means we give that to you as a citizen. So we will then publish this. And you'll be able to look at our website in real time and see how the government's tracking. That's where this is heading. And a very important initiative for me around culture. So finally, just in closing, there's some of the challenges. None of those will surprise you. But the bottom one I've just mentioned is probably the key one in my experience. It's not technical. It's not a lack of will by Cabinet or by secretaries or by clusters. It's more about getting the culture right and working together as a whole of government, not just one approach. And finally, just to close with that, I mean, I find as I move around government, there's still a fairly traditional view of what this means. It's putting more forms on the web, etc., rather than genuinely stepping back and saying, where is the customer and citizen improvement? Is all the things that we're doing genuinely to my benefit in making my life easier, better, simpler and faster? Thank you.